Hey everyone, it's Hurley from Inklips and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use these hero art stamps and dies in today's video to create some really awesome Christmas cards, and also these watercolors here and some really fun coloring mediums as well. So for this first card, I'm just going to show you how to create a really fun and colorful watercolor background and put together a whole scene using Copic markers and a bunch of different little critters. So I'm starting off by taping my piece of watercolor paper to a board using frog tape, which is a painter's tape so it won't seep your water through. And I started out with a blue on top, and I'm just using Tambi watercolors here, which are really nice and thick colors that go on really well. And I'm using just lots of water to kind of puddle on the color and tilting my board so that it leaves kind of a puddle on the bottom so that the colors blend really well in this background. So I started off with a blue, I go into a red, and it kind of turns into a purple because it blends all together. Then I'm piling on a bunch of orange color here, which turns it into a little bit more of a reddish maroonish color. So as all of them go together, they kind of blend together, and I'm still leaving a puddle of color kind of at the bottom so that they all really blend super smoothly without any really harsh edges or lines. And then I'm going down with the bottom with a yellow, and it kind of turns it into an orange. Don't worry if you think your colors are a little too intense. Mine here were actually super light, but it dries back a ton and goes super light once it's dry. So I'm actually going to go on here with a second coat of colors, and I'm just really piling on the color the second time and making it way more pigmented than I did in the first run. And you'll see a bunch of color going on here, and this kind of helps it so that it gets a much darker effect. And you'll see later on in the card that this background is a lot darker than it was in the beginning, and I'm just going to be piling on a lot more color than I did in the first place. So you'll see a lot more water here as well because I wanted them all to blend just a little bit more. And I'm adding the orange here, and then I'm going to go into the yellow at the bottom once again. And I find that a lot of these colors are super pigmented in the Tambi. They're almost like non-translucent watercolors if you add them thick enough. So I would try to avoid adding them too thick, but just thick enough so that it gives you a nice dark color. And if you work in layers, it actually gives you a super nice color without kind of over piling it on. And then I'm going to use my heat tool to dry it because I'm impatient. But watercolor actually does turn out better if you don't use your heat tool, and it'll give you those softer lines. So then I'm taking this panel and taping it onto that full background die from Hero Arts. And then I'm going to just poke out all the little holes, and you can kind of move it around too, and maybe use a stiff bristled brush or something to get all these little pieces out, because they're a little bit of a pain, but it definitely creates a really stunning background with all these little holes in it. And I wanted to make it look a little bit like snow, and you'll see that later on. So now I'm stamping down all of the little animals from this stamp set, which I just love, and baby Jesus as well on the top. And so I'm stamping those down in Memento Tuxedo Black in my Misty tool, and I needed to stamp it twice, so using that tool was awesome to get a nice crisp image on all of them. And I'm leaving them pretty far apart as well because I'm going to be die cutting them later, so you just want to keep that in mind as you're going to be running your dies through later on. So then I'm going to start off with my Copic coloring here. I'm doing it really simple, like I almost always do. I'm starting off with the camel here and just doing some lighter gray colors. And on the inside of these animals, where they don't have much detail, I'm just kind of adding some swirly little lines that are a little bit darker for the animals. And you'll see that kind of adds a little bit more of an effect to the animals and actually gives them a little more interest than they had. Then for these sheep, I wanted to keep them really light, so I'm just using a light gray color and my Copic blender, or whatever kind of alcohol blender you have. And I'm just blending it all out to make it super light, and it really gives a nice effect for those little sheep. Then I'm moving on to that little hay bed for Jesus, and then I'm moving on to his little cloth with the blue. I'm just using blue and kind of switching off with all those little lines and blending all the colors together. I'm using about 2 or 3 shades for each animal to give a lot of different contrasts and things like that. Now most of these colors of the animals are super simple and really monotone and things like that, so I wanted to bring in a lot of the color on the background, and so most of these animals are really nice neutral colors, and then the background really pops to make the whole scene kind of come together. So then again for these little animals here, I'm just adding a bunch of little kind of swirly marks on the inside of them on their little stomachs to make them kind of a little bit more interesting. And moving on to the donkey here and just coloring it in with some darker gray colors and kind of varying the tones in all of them. So each one has a different kind of subtle tone, even though they do have grays and browns. A lot of them are different, some of them are darker and some of them are lighter. So that's how I kind of kept the variation going with all these little animals. I'm using that same frog tape because it's really gentle as you run it through your die cutting machine, and I'm going to line up all the dies that go with these to die cut them out and get a perfect edge, and it leaves a little bit of white border around them, which is what I wanted. So I'm just popping the little dies out here and they come up perfectly, and then I'm going to move on to my background. I added it onto a card base, and I'm going to just use some white ink and a finger dauber and daub on some little whiter spots so that it looks kind of like snow or stars, and my goal was to actually make the little circles in the background look like snow as well. And I think it looks really cool with all the dark colors and then just that white stark background with all those little holes poking through. So then I'm going to use my sentiment here. I'm stamping it onto some black cardstock that says Christmas Blessings, and then I'm going to be white heating embossing this, so I'm just sprinkling on some of the powder, and I use an anti-static powder tool as well to make sure that none of it sticks where I didn't want it to, and then I'm going to heat set that, and you can wipe off that powder once it's done. The one that you see in the background there, and then I'm going to add the whole scene together. I didn't really show all that because it was kind of a long process and I used a lot of foam tape and stuff, and then I'm going to be adding some stickles and some glossy accents all around the card, and I'm also adding some Wink of Stella to the background and to the animals in different places just to give them a little bit more shimmer and shine and to add some more detail to this card, and that about finishes this one off. But now it's time to move on to the second card for today's video. So this is the second card. I decided it would be funny to use the same stamp set and the same dies and everything, but create a really kind of more comical card with the mouse just pulling the camel with a little string attached to them. So I'm actually stamping my images on, I'm using a waterproof ink here, and I'm stamping my images onto some Bristol cardstock. Now this stuff is really smooth and it kind of has a coating onto it. So you'll see these colors blend super well. I was just testing it out in today's video. I actually figured out you want to do little sections at a time. I kind of did little sections at first and then did larger sections and it didn't blend as well. But the more you do little sections, they blend super well. Now if you try these zig markers on a lot of different other cardstocks, they might not work as well for you and you might think that they don't really work that well. But really this Bristol cardstock gives them just a little bit more time to blend that they need. And I think it has like a little bit more of a coating on the top and it's really smooth so it doesn't really sink into the paper for a while. And so you're able to blend these colors a lot better. Now you're going to want to watch out with that to not add too much dark color because that kind of blends out. And it made my camel just a little bit darker than I wanted it to. But I still think this card turned out really awesome, and I've never really tried this Bristol before, but I plan to use it definitely in the future because I love these Zig Clean Color brush pens, and this is definitely the paper to use them with. I used to just use regular watercolor paper with them in the past, and it doesn't work nearly as well as this does, and this just gives a super smooth blending, almost like you would get with Copics, except you can definitely tell that it has a really nice rich color on it, and it kind of looks like a little bit like watercolor. You can also water these markers out, but I do love the effect that they get when you just blend the different colors together. And then I'm just going to color this mouse in really quickly as well with some grays and bluish gray tones here, and I'm just blending those out again. Since we're using the Bristol, it's really easy to do. Then I've die cut that same background with the circles on it, and I'm just going to be rubbing some different color ink pads to make that skyline here. This is just a super simple and quick way to make an easy background, just a die cut and then just swish some ink pads on the background. These are some Simon Says stamp ink pads and I love the colors, the bright colors you can put in the background with them. So I'm using just an orange, a pink, a blue, and then a purple for the top. And this kind of gives me a little bit of a skyline. You can use more or less colors in the background if you want to. And you can also ink blend these on if you want a little bit of a softer look. But I tried to go for kind of a little bit harsh, unblended kind of look here. And it gives these colors a really awesome effect. So then I'm taping a piece of string behind the little mouse so that it looks like he's carrying the little camel with the string. And I'm adding it onto the camel's back as well, kind of around his neck. And then I'm going to tape that onto the back side of him. Now you might want to use a little bit of a stronger tape than frog tape. I had a little bit of struggles with this. And then I'm I'm gluing a little bit of a bow on top of that string on the camel's neck, using some glossy accents to give it a little bit of a better effect and make it look a little bit better as well. So I'm just going to add that on there and make sure that it dries on there, and then once again I'm coming in with a finger dauber and some white ink, and I love the effect that this gives to make it look like it's a little bit more snowy of a background. I've stamped Merry Christmas onto some vellum and I'm just heat setting that, and I'm using heat embossing as well for this, using some champagne or gold embossing powder here, and I'm just going to heat set that and cut them out, and I'm going to score them diagonally on my card here. You'll kind of see how this all comes together. I'm going to cut it down, score it diagonally, add it onto the corners here, and kind of fold it over the vellum and added some adhesive onto the back. Then I'm adding a shadow underneath my animals using the same Zig Clean Color real brush pens just underneath the little camel's feet and the little mouse as well, just to add a little bit of shadow and grounding to these little animals so that they have a little place to stand as well. Now after I've done that, I'm going to go around on my card and add just a couple of sequins as well, because the card needed a little bit of extra something. It was just missing a little something, so I'm just adding some clear sparkling sequins. It's a mix from Lucy Abrams, and I love all these sequins. And the mix that they comes with, there's a bunch of different shapes and different colors and things like that you can add to your card, and it really is awesome for just some embellishments and a finishing touch for the end. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you want to hit that subscribe button to not miss any more videos from from this channel, please click that link on screen, as well as stopping over by my blog. There's much more information over there, as well as pictures and a whole supplies list. And if you want to check out more of my videos, there's links on screen here to some if you want to check them out as well. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and I'll see you very soon in another card making crafting video. Bye guys!